Welcome back to another action-packed episode of the Deadly Podcast of Kung Fu, brought to you by the Villains of Man, where I, Justin Raymer, traverse the worlds of Marvel's most prolific martial artist and Iron Fist Shang Chi and the White Tiger. If you want to keep up with the podcast, you can do so over on Twitter X, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. If you want to keep myself, Justin Raymer, you can do so over on Twitter X, Instagram, and Blue Sky. If you want to hear me and my friends play some tabletop role-playing games such as Dungeons & Dragons and Star Wars, go check us out over on The Last Tavern on the Left podcast, wherever you follow Deadly Kung Fu Pod on. We are currently marching towards the end of this chapter in the Infinity Crisis of the Omniverse, my comic book manga-inspired campaign where my characters are playing Doctor Doom, Kid Goku, and Ichigo Kurosaki as they try to figure out who is trying to destroy all of existence, as in the Omniverse. If you like having a good laugh, if you like some good role-playing, if you love just playing TTRPGs, please subscribe to the podcast. Now today we're wrapping up the Marvel Infinity Comics Astonishing Avengers with issues 28 through 30, which brings us to the finale of this series. If you want, please go listen to the last episode, which will cover issues 24, 25, 26, and 27. Those are a very Shang-Chi-eccentric story. Then you can go back in your feed from earlier this year, check out the other story that's very Shang-Chi-eccentric. Then you can go listen to Steve Orlando's 5-part Avengers series, where they face a Serpent Society where Steve Rogers calls back on Shang-Chi to join the team. Or you can do all that in reverse order, which probably makes a lot more sense. Now, before you do all this, you do have some back issue reading you can do in regards to this podcast and listen to some episodes. Now you can go back into the Wayback Machine to the last time I covered Power Man and Iron Fist, which was issues 55 through 57 on the podcast, titled Chaos at the Coliseum, The Scarab Sting, and Pharaohs on Broadway, as they both encountered the living monolith with the X-Men. Because guess who's returning? As a villain in the giant red monolith, we all seen it coming. But regardless, go listen to those episodes. Fire up your Marvel Unlimited, read Power Man and Iron Fist 55, 56, and 57 before you read this. Now, what you can do, and in that episode I do reference the Marvel team-up issues before that Iron Fist and Power Man story. Living Monolith's been around for a while. He's fought Thor, mainly with the X-Men. He's obsessed with Havoc in one of these stories. So if you want, just search the Living Monolith, and he's got a handful of stories. And if you're a fan of any of those other characters involved, outside of listening to this and obviously being a fan of Iron Fist, go read those comics before you read this, because it's going to make this go a lot smoother when you read these stories, and it's going to make a lot of it make a lot more sense. But anyways, the creative team for these 3 issues is your writer Steve Orlando. As I said, he's written this entire run. He wrote the 5-part Avengers story before this, which started all of it with this Avengers Emergency Response Squad. Your artist is Francisco Archidiacono. Your color artist is Carlos Lopez. Letters go to VC's Travis Lanham, and the cover artist is Steven Segovia and Edgar Delgado. So let's go ahead and jump into this. I'm going to try to be real short with this one because there's not a lot of Shang-Chi, but I just want to give you the overall feel of what's going on with the synopsis. So issue 28. After weeks of inactivity, the red monolith on Staten Island begins stirring. Night Thrasher calls upon phone rangers to help communicate with it. An alien being appears on the surface who was once Ahmet Abdul, the Egyptianologist turned villain known as the living monolith. Ahmet reveals that he is absorbing cosmic radiation to build his body, and once he emerges, he will feed on the life energies of Earth for his mysterious journey. Night Thrasher cracks Ahmet in the head and immediately realizes he fell into a villain's trap. Dwayne's impact causes the crystal shell to fracture and release Ahmet. Fearing the worst, he sends out an immediate call to the rest of the Avengers. Meanwhile, across New York, the paralyzed Elijah Jackson watches his daughter speak to him. Sensing Simone is once again in danger, A warm and familiar light washes over him. Issue 29. The Avengers Emergency Response Squad arrives and battles Amet, who is now calling himself the Living Testament, and reveals this is his final transformation. Realizing the heavy hitters will not be enough, Phone Ranger calls the Avengers from the Impossible City to aid. Shang Chi and both Avengers team up to do whatever they can to stop Amet. Neither physical force or siphoning his energy slows him down as he draws more power from the Earth to move between time and space. Don't cause the Egyptologist to turn evil, Night Thrasher tries to guilt trip him, but it doesn't work. Unleashing all of his might, the Living Testament's energy washes over the Earth, drawing the life force from every living creature and the world itself. Thinking he has finally found the Illumina, a dimension between space and time, Amet is proven wrong as Elijah has arrived as Captain Beyond. The final issue, issue 30. Captain Beyond and the Living Testament battle, but Elijah realizes he has to save all life on Earth at the same time. He cuts the power drain ties to the Avengers so they can aid him in the fight. Together they begin to win, but it's not fast enough to stop him. Night Thrasher tells Captain Beyond to let Amet into the Illumina, which causes his powers to increase, but there is also a catch. Elijah informs the villain that you can't break down the door to see the light beyond creation. It has to willingly let you through. Unable to fathom that he has come this far only to realize he can go no further, the Living Testament rapidly loses his power and restores the energy back to Earth. Upon returning home, Amet realizes how wrong he has been and turns himself in. She-Hulk promises to represent him and help bring to trial the people that murdered his wife and daughter. With the world saved, Elijah gives his powers up once again, but not without a technological upgrade from Night Thrasher, so he can speak with his daughter while immobile. So, like most of the series, not a lot of Shang Chi. It's not very Shang Chi heavy. Makes me realize that I need a solo Shang Chi book like Jean Yang's story. I don't think he does well with these teams, especially with a character as powerful as this Living Testament, which used to be the Living Monolith, who was also just too powerful for Iron Fist and Power Man in the stories that I referenced. He needs to be more focused on mystical stuff and threats to the five weapon societies. And it's cool that he gets a spotlight. I'm assuming this is going to swing on into X Avengers here at the end of October. Please go get that at your comic book shops if you haven't pre-ordered it. He's mixed with a mutant. Not sure who it is. I thought it was kind of Rock Slide, but who knows. But still, I'm assuming that because he's Avenger, that's why he's going to get swept up in this X Avengers, and I'm very curious to see how that plays out, which is also written by Jason Liu, who is doing Undead Iron Fist. But he does have some interesting stuff that comes into play here. So when we go to issue 28, when he finally makes his opening attack on the living, I'm going to say living monolith because it's just what I'm used to. But so the living monolith, I'm trying to say Testament, I just can't bring myself to it. I mean, love the band Testament, but I just can't bring myself to call him the Living Testament. But so he is ciphering off Photon's powers, and I don't want to talk about some of the really awesome scenery in this book because you've got Photon, Lightning, Storm, Hercules is Uru, I don't want to call it Mace, Wonder Man, Captain Marvel, Photon, like they're all doing all they can to disrupt his power or like try to siphon off of it. And it's pretty epic, powerful stuff. And I don't really want to dive into that because I got caught up in it for this review. Go read this story because there's some epicness in here that's pretty awesome during this fight with all these powerhouse Avengers that comes fight this guy because this dude's like on the level of Null. But anyway, so Photon is being absorbed, and I'm going to read some of this. Suddenly, Photon wasn't absorbing the power, she was being absorbed by it, as if caught in the worst undertow in history. If Photon didn't hold out, she'd be pulled into the monolith and dispersed so far that she'd barely exist at all. Luckily, she had a relief pitcher, the master of Kung Fu and the wielder of the 10 Rings of Ta Lo. Now, this story is told through Elijah, Captain Beyond, and he's basically the Omniforce or the Uniforce or whatever it's called, if I've got that right. He has a really cool look to him, and I'll get more to that a little later. But he's telling, like, the story here. And how did he know what Ta Lo was? Because he's been paralyzed for quite some time. And he cannot read. He uses his eyes to blink. So how would he know of Tao Lo? But anyways, well, I guess when he's Captain Beyond, he can see probably everything. So I guess that answers that. But we see Shang-Chi, and he's almost, it's very anime. Like, he's got his fists together, and he's screaming like he's got power surging around him. The rings are all warping around this monolith. Shang-Chi had mastered his chi and could manipulate Abdul's too. Between that and his rings, he tried like hell to stop Abdul from breaking free. If the Avengers had all pressed their advantages sooner, they might have closed the crack in the monolith. They could have connected with what was left of Abdul's humanity and forced the wound to heal, but inside a tower, a chain reaction was revving up, and all any of us Avengers could do was slow it down. So, he's not quite powerful enough, but I like how it says that he can manipulate the living monolith's chi. Now, surely it can't be him, it's got to be the ring. So there's a new power. I thought that was really neat. We go to the next issue on 29. So they're all attacking the Living Testament. And Captain Marvel says, "You want power, Abdul? We've got more than you can handle." And Shang-Chi's leaping at him, shooting the rings at him. "You're after what? Universal truth? Join the club, dude. We all like a piece of that, but none of us try to consume people's lives to get there." So maybe the way this book goes, where Night Thrasher tries to appeal to his humanity, like, I could see where maybe Shang-Chi should have been used at. Like, hey, man, I've always looked for a path of peace, of pacifism. Like, let's find this together because I want that just as much as you, instead of just straight up fighting. I could see where maybe he should have not switched with Night Thrasher, but maybe been on that side of Night Thrasher and talking, because we know that Shang-Chi's battling gods in this book. I talked about that the last episode with Chernerbog and Sin and whatever god that she was possessed by. But this Living Testament seems far, far beyond him, considering that, I mean, it's literally fighting, energy-based Avengers such as Wonder Man and Photon. He's fighting Storm, who's practically a weather god at this point in her own series. He's fighting Captain Marvel, who's uber powerful. We have the power of Hercules, the strength of She-Hulk. I mean, Lightning is a badass energy Avenger also. And, he has no business fighting this thing. But he does, but I think he'd been better served to try to appeal to his humanity and talk to him rather than fight him. We go back to Captain Beyond after this, where he talks about the universal truth. Captain Beyond says, "Captain Marvel was a dynamo all on her own. She and Storm unloaded on Abdul. And as long as Abdul was alive, even in a small way, Shang-Chi couldn't dampen his chi. It was enough to stagger the man, but not to stop him. And the professor was starting to get annoyed." So, in an interesting way, as this fight is progressing, and it doesn't get better for them until after this. But here in the beginning, they're attacking him physically, they're attacking him with energy, but it seems like Shang-Chi is attacking his spirit. So these rings can attack your soul, because that's where the source of your chi would be, in your body, in your spirit. And we kind of seen that with Tiger Snake back in the 5-part Avengers run that led all of this, because he kind of attacked his soul. So I thought that was kind of a neat little callback there, if I'm correct with what's going on there with Steve Orlando. I thought that was pretty neat. Now, as for this Captain Beyond, I wasn't very familiar with him. He's got one appearance in Marvel Comics Presents. Basically, he gets the unipower when his daughter Simone is being jumped by a gang. And he's kind of the same thing. He's paralyzed. He can only blink his eyes. Same type of thing. And that, I mean, he's only got one issue. There's not a lot to talk about. His look as Captain Beyond, at first, I didn't read this issue beforehand to kind of understand it. For one, it's not on Marvel Unlimited, so if you want to go back and read it, it's not there. But he's very energy-based, and he reminded me of the person who gathered all the mutant energy after House of M during, Decimation that the Avengers fought, and I thought, no way, but no, it's Captain Beyond. And he looks pretty sweet. His design is very colorful. I really, really enjoy it. I need this guy in Blue Marvel in a team-up, because I think that would be really, really cool. Then we get this character, Phone Ranger. Never heard of him, but he's dressed like a telephone. And basically, he can communicate with anything, even if it's electronic. If it's alien, like apparently he understood that the monolith was speaking in the tongue of the builders, which Hercules knew because he had the all speak, and I don't think that's something that gets talked about a lot, so I thought that was really cool by Steve Orlando. But yeah, I'd never heard of this character at all that I'm aware of, but apparently he's been around for a really long time, since Marvel Age Annual back in 1985 and issue 1. Never heard of the character, but he kind of trips out that he's become an Avenger during this time. So he's only got 6 appearances. I am not surprised. So he was actually in Civil War Frontline number 5. I own that, and I don't even remember him in that. The rest of the other comics before this, he was in Ziggy Piggy Silly Seal Comics, Volume 2, number 1. Never heard of it. I'm not even aware that this even existed. But apparently this was here recently by what it looks like. Yeah, 2019. Had no clue. As for the Living Testament, who used to be the Living Monolith, he's got a really crazy alien look to him. The design is pretty awesome. Very, very big upgrade from the old Living Monolith back in the Power Man and Iron Fist 55 through 57. Very alien-like. I could see this something like maybe out of Halo. 2, 3, like something with the Covenant. It kind of reminds me of that. But yeah, he's uber powerful. Like, they're all fighting him, and even the Uniforce couldn't stop him. And if I'm right, that's what Venom had to fight Null, because it was the light. And, like, he realizes that he can't even beat him. So he's stupid powerful. They literally had to reason with him and show him what he wanted and that he couldn't attain it because of who exactly that he was. So I guess the big question here is, will we see him again? Will he return? Because he turned himself in, and if you know anything about the villain, like, when he believed that gods were mutants and that they were obviously the next step in evolution, and because what he believed was heresy, like a mob of people, I shouldn't say a gang, really, they murdered his wife and daughter, or there was like a car crash or something, and he survived, and he just got lost in his studies and became very villainous about it. Now, a lot of people complain about these stories because the way you have to scroll through them, and I think this issues, and I don't read a lot of the Infinity comics, just if they're involved with some of the characters that I enjoy, that's when I usually read them. But some of the scrolling in this is pretty awesome. So when the Avengers show up in issue 28, like when you scroll down, it's like you're like looking down the hill at the lineup, and it serves it really, really well. And then we go on into the next issue, even in this issue, the reveal of the Living Testament, like, it's a very lengthy art page. And, it's not wasted, just a reveal as you keep scrolling down. The next issue also has some pretty good moments from when you're scrolling. For instance, it opens up with, like, Monica is trying to punch the Testament, and, like, you scrolling down and we see Wonder Man almost like he's trying to use energy against him. And the scrolling abilities in Infinity Comics really work really, really, really well. For, like, when the Impossible City Avengers show up, like, it's like from the sky looking down, because the very top character is Storm, and her lightning guides you down to the rest of them as they appear. And the next page, when they're attacking him, like, we see Storm and they're all, like, falling down the sky, like they're soaring at him on the ground. And the scrolling really does a good way of leading you to that. And even in the last issue, when Captain Beyond powers up the Avengers after they're being siphoned their energies from, like, there's a whole scroll of them, and they're, like, all, like, charging downward towards him from the sky. And the scrolling thing really works well with that. And I was very impressed with it, because usually you don't get the art on these books that work real well with the scrolling ability of these Infinity Comics. And to me, in these issues, there's some really good moments for that. So if you hate that, look at these books, and maybe you'll enjoy that part of them. But overall, I don't say that I didn't hate this series. It didn't have enough Shang Chi in me, that's why I read it. But there are some really good arcs. I am going to suggest the Undercover Wrestling arc, which is, I think, like right before issue 20. So that might be like 16, 17, 18, 19. Really good stuff if you love wrestling. I enjoyed it a lot. Steve Orlando has all my praise for that. That'll wrap up this episode of the Daily Podcast of Kung Fu, brought to you by the Villains Man. If you like the podcast, keep up with it over on social media platforms, Twitter, X, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. If you like my music, check out Rushing Tiger by Kuro over on SoundCloud. But most importantly, pick up Shang Chi's next appearance in X Avengers, part of the X-Men Age of Revelation event here at the end of October 2025. That way you can support your local comic book shops and you can keep reading those comics, guys.